Now that I'm done with Starlit Enclave, it's time to move on to my next reading project. Now, something I try and do generally, and something I'm trying to make a real effort to do this year in particular, is to alternate my guilty pleasures with reading more of the classics. So, this was obviously one of the guilty pleasures. Time for classics. And here we have classical tragedy, Greek and Roman. 8 Greek and Roman classic plays here, which will count towards my reading of the classics. And this is also ties into the other project I'm trying to work on, which is the one inspired by Steve Donahue, which is the Western Canon Starter Kit. So Steve Donahue argues that if you're going to try and read through the classics, you should try and read through them in order. So the ancient world before the modern world, to oversimplify. So I'm trying to knock off the ancient classics. That's part of the reason I'm reading through the Bible. But in addition to the Bible, there's the Greek and the Romans. Now, this is a compilation volume which I got from my school library. And I'm going to do what I usually do with these compilation books and review each of these separately. So I'm going to count this as 8 different works. That will be good for my classic count for the end of the year. I get 8, count 8 different classics under my belt. And actually, apologies for this. Hopefully this doesn't get too annoying. The Orestia is actually a trilogy. So I'm going to count this as 3 separate works and try and read each one and then review them separately. And then once I finish the whole volume, make some comments on the volume. So this volume, and again, as always with these starting videos, I haven't read the book yet, but just looking through it, these translations look to be quite readable. And some of these I had earlier tried to track down on like Project Gutenberg, Prometheus Bound in particular. And they've got like a translation there from the 19th century, which was really not modern, stiff and archaic. These translations, just flipping through them, look like they're going to be quite modern and readable. And there's a little essay at the end of each play, which I'll try and read as well. So, for example, Prometheus Bound, here's the essay at the end of it, a couple essays, and here's the play. I have, to my shame, not really done a good job of reading the Greek or Roman plays up until this point in my life. And I really should have, especially because when I was young, I was interested in this stuff. I entered university as a classics major. I was studying Latin in high school and college, and never got I ended up dropping it before I got around to studying Greek. But the idea at that point was to study the classical languages and read the classics, and I didn't stick with it. I changed to a general history major. At one point, during my interest in the Trojan War, when I was in middle school, and I think maybe even into high school, I was trying to get a hold of as many books as I could have on the Trojan War, including some of the plays that overlapped with the Trojan War. So I had some Greek plays on my shelves and flipped through them, but never actually read them cover to cover. I did not have the patience to actually sit down and read them cover to cover, even though I was interested in Greek mythology generally. And it's been, my interest has shifted several times over the years as I become interested in this and become interested in that. But I've always assumed that at some point I would read these classic Greek plays. And then one of the things with becoming middle-aged is suddenly you realize, the time's running out. If I'm ever going to read these books, better get onto it. So here's a collection which will knock off 8 of these books, and actually I'm going to be counting this as 10 because I'm going to be counting the Orestia as 3 different plays. I believe, I've read a lot of Greek mythology when I was younger, mostly uh, modern versions of it, like versions for a modern audience or for a young audience. So I think I know all the background behind these stories, and that should not be a barrier to entry. Antigone is the only one of these that I've actually read before. This was part of the high school curriculum where I went to school. It was 12th grade, if I remember right. We had to read Antigone. We talked about the whole trilogy as background, but Antigone was the only one we actually read. The rest of these I have not read. Yeah, it will be my first time through them. And high time I started checking some of these classics off of my list. So if all goes according to plan, you'll be hearing a lot from me as I read through this book. I'll be giving mini reviews of every play separately and counting the Orestia as 3 different plays. And then when it's all done, I'll come back and review this volume as a whole. Speaking of this volume, I've looked it up briefly on Amazon. People say that the translations are modern and readable. Some people say that the translations take a little bit too much liberty with the original Latin or Greek. I'll just have to take their word for it. But just looking at this, you can see that it reads maybe a little bit too smoothly in the English. Maybe they are kind of translating by gist instead of a more literal translation. But I'm just I can't be picky about the type of translation I come across. And to be quite honest, a more modern and readable translation I would prefer over a faithful translation anyways. I have this idea that maybe some of these I might even reread in different translations. Of course, given the fact that it's taken me until midlife to even read these once, maybe that's a little bit overly ambitious. But we all have dreams, huh? We all have hopes and dreams and plans, and becoming better read is one of mine. One of the other things I picked up on Amazon, people were complaining that some of the punctuation or the grammar was a lot of mistakes in this edition, which surprises me because it looks like these are all different translations that were published separately at different times and put into this volume. But maybe a problem with the typesetting. I don't know. But for the most part, people seem to approve of this collection. It looks like, again, from Amazon, that overwhelmingly this is being used by students and taught in classes, which I guess is where a lot of these things where a lot of people encounter this, right? In the classroom. I think that's all I've got. So I'll finish out here and hope to come back soon with reviews of some of these plays.